Hello, welcome back. All right, so let's go to where we left off the last time, okay? I'm going to be sharing my screen to you guys. Okay, so here's a note where I wrote down some of the questions to help us generate idea to answer this question. So let's just go through the questions once again before we carry on, so that we all we're all on the same page. We understand what we're doing. Okay, so our goal is to answer this very question. Do you agree whether banning cigarette advertising will help to reduce the percentage of young smokers? That's the goal. We want to answer this question, but we don't know yet whether we should agree or we should disagree with this statement. All right? Okay, so in order to do that, we have to first generate some ideas. And the ideas that we have generated will indicate whether it is going to be more advantageous for us to agree or it's going to be more advantageous for us to disagree. All right, so unless you guys can drop me some ideas, all right, I'm going to just write things down, okay? So I'm going to write down some answer to the to all these questions, okay? All right, so I understand this table doesn't look very nice, so I'm just going to, write down all these questions down below with the answers. Okay, and you guys can help me. You can help to contribute to the answer as well. If you have different ideas or anything you want to add, please let me know. Right. Okay, so starting with clarification. Clarification, we have the question, what is nicotine and why it is addictive? Okay, so we have what is nicotine and why it is addictive. Okay, so based on my opinion, I would say that nicotine is an is a substance found in cigarettes. Okay, it's found in cigarette, which allows the release of a dopamine. So that's the chemical that's make you feel relaxed, feeling happy. Of dopamine which allows the release of dopamine, making smokers feel relaxed. Okay, so it's a feel good substance. Substances make you feel good, okay, because it's sort of mess with your dopamine system, right? It's trigger the dopamine system to release the dopamines, which is a kind of chemicals that make you feel relaxed, feeling good. All right, okay. Why is it addictive? Well, it's probably because when your body, your brain likes it when it feels good, and when you ran out of it, it's just ask for more, right? Okay, moving on to awareness. So what's the question we have? What are the adverse impacts of teenage nicotine addiction? So I'm gonna write down what are the, some of the adverse impacts of teenage nicotine addiction. Okay, so let's just try to categorize our ideas, right? So first, I'm gonna try to think of some of the impacts that are health related. So I'm gonna write here, health related. Okay, right. So you talk about health related, I think we could break it down to the how nicotine or how smoking cigarettes affect our breathing system or our respiratory system. So I'm going to put down here respiratory. Respiratory issues or diseases. Okay, all right. So I think one of the respiratory diseases that is caused by smoking cigarettes is this thing called bronchitis. Okay, and you can Google it for more information. What else? We can have emphysema. And of course, lung cancer. Okay, so that's respiratory diseases. And to be honest, all these informations are available on the package of the cigarettes themselves. Pretty weird, right? I think cigarettes are one of the few products that don't need advertising in order to make sales. People just buy cigarettes even though there's no information about that whatsoever. This is crazy, right? If you think about it, if you study marketing, then you probably know some strategies to attract people, your target customers to your products, right? There's like many ways, but you just have to make effort to attract customers to your product. But cigarettes, they just sell themselves. They don't need any marketing strategies, no advertising. So it's one of the few magical products that can just sell themselves. So yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so respiratory diseases, we have bronchitis, we have emphysema, lung cancer. Um, I also noticed on a package of cigarette that say erectile dysfunction, but that has nothing to do with respiratory disease. But I want to include that anyway, so I'm going to make another bullet point. But I'm going to say here erectile dysfunction. Okay, but I think it's a new category by itself. All right. Okay, so those are health-related impacts. But are there any other impacts that are non-health related? Well, I think so. I think there's some financial, right? Financially related impact. And I mean, if teenagers, they don't make money themselves, right? They spend their parents' money, so it's going to end up causing burden to their parents if the kids smoke, right? They will have more expenses, so it's going to put some stress on the parent, especially those who are in the low income bracket. So financially related, smoking could add non-essential expenses to low income families. This could be bad, right? Okay. Moving on to I forgot to put a heading right here, awareness, okay? Awareness. Okay. Moving on to some of the questions that we should be able to answer if you want to be on the same side as the people who want to ban cigarette advertising. So the first question, but first of all, let me just put the heading for. So this is going to be argument to support the statement in the question. So first question, how could cigarette advertising cause addiction for teenagers? So let's write that down. How could cigarette advertising lead to teenage nicotine addiction? All right, how is that possible? Well, in my opinion, I think it's because, first of all, it increases teenagers' exposure to acts of smoking, which means they will see act of smoking more often, right? Okay, they probably see that act of smoking from the family members already. But when they watch their favorite shows, and then suddenly they see cigarette advertisement, that will just increase their exposure. So it's going to give them, curiosity as to, is this really good? Okay, because it seems that everyone, people in my family smoke, and it also shows on television that this stuff is good. So why don't I just give it a try myself? So it's basically, it increases curiosity. So higher exposure will lead to curiosity, and curiosity will lead to trial, and the trials will then lead to addiction. Okay, of course, if they like it. Well, some kids like myself, I try smoking, I don't like it. So I will never become an addict because I don't like smoking. All right. So how could secret advertising lead to teenage nicotine addiction? I would say the advertising will increase young people exposure, which means it will allow them to see acts of smoking more often. Increase young people exposure to acts of smoking. All right. Which arouses their curiosity. All right. Arouses curiosity means making someone want to try to do something. Okay. Which arouses their curiosity. Okay. I would say to the point where they want to try and subsequently become addicted. All right, that's my opinion. Now, what's the next question? How could the banning of cigarette advertising reduce the percentage of young smokers? So let's write that down. How could the banning of cigarettes advertising lead to a lower percentage of young smokers? Okay, so what do you guys think? I think if you remove advertising from all sorts of media, it's going to sort of show that, hey, we don't really approve of this, right? At least the authority doesn't approve of this, and it will reduce the exposure to smoking. So it's simply going to reduce the exposure, which then prevents the young people from becoming curious, right? Okay. I mean, if you think of this as, like a current that flow in a wire, right? Okay, if you have like a heater in your apartment or in your bedroom, and when it's cold, you turn one on, right? Say you live in an apartment with 5 people. During summer, nobody turns on the heater, so so the current that you draw from the circuit where you install heater is not that large. It's 0 amp, right? Okay, but say in winter, your friends turn on the heater, and let's say your friends have guests come over to stay at night, and they bring their own heater, right? And they're like, turn on so many heater. So the current's going to flow, but the circuit breaker is not going to trip because it doesn't reach the point where it becomes too dangerous, right? Okay, so it's not going to trip, right? But when it reaches a certain point, it will trip. So this is a kind of scenario that I think could apply to young people. All right, so if they see something that can arouse their curiosity, they see it, but they will not try it because they don't see it often enough or long enough. But the more they become exposed to it, right, the level of curiosity will begin to rise, and it can, well, we don't know what the limit is going to be, right? It's different from one person to another. But one thing I'm pretty sure is that the curiosity will start to rise. And sooner or later, it's going to reach a point where they're going to feel like, hey, I can't take this anymore. I have to try. Yeah, something like that. Okay. So we don't want that curiosity to rise to that limit. We want to stop it, or we want to curb it. I mean, they can be curious, but we want to curb that level of curiosity to be as low as possible so that it doesn't reach the point where they want to, hey, I gotta go buy some, I gotta try. All right, so that was what I'm thinking. How could banning the cigarette? Let's answer these questions. Well, because it will reduce teenagers' exposure to active smoking. Okay, which will keep their curiosity at bay. So keeping curiosity at bay doesn't allow the curiosity to rise to a high level. Okay, because it will, all right, which keeps the curiosity at bay. Minimizing the chance of trials. Okay, which minimize the chance of trial, which lower the risk of them actually going to buy cigarette and to try to smoke themselves. Okay, so that's it. Next question: what are some of the inherent benefits of banning cigarette advertising? Okay, so let us write that down. What are some of the benefits associated with the banning of cigarette advertising? Some of the benefits associated with the banning of cigarette advertising. So, what do you think? I think, okay, like I said the last time, we need to know what would be the main competitors of tobacco business, right? Well, if tobacco business is out of the way, who's going to dominate the market? But I'm not so sure. I'm not very sure. So if you guys have any ideas, please let me know. For now, I'm just going to put an NA because I can't think of any competitors yet, right? Okay. Let's move on to some of the questions in this against column. So we're now going to change our attitude. We're going to switch role. So if you want to be on the opposite side of those who want to ban cigarette advertising to reduce the rate of nicotine addiction, what would be your ideas? So to generate those ideas, here's are the questions that we should be able to answer. Starting with, in what way is cigarette advertising not the cause of teenage nicotine addiction? Let's write that down. In what way is cigarette advertising not the cause of nicotine addiction? So I think it is quite obvious in some countries that have already banned cigarettes from being advertised on mass media and also social media. Like Thailand, for example, there's no advertising of cigarettes anywhere because it's banned. Even when you go to the 7-Eleven, they actually put a blind on the shelf where they sell cigarettes because they don't want people to see. They don't want to arouse people's desire to smoke. So they have tried every way to keep the population from access or from becoming addicted to cigarette. They've done every way. They put the blind on the shelves. They increase the sin tax or tobacco taxes, making the price of a cigarettes, a pack of cigarettes higher. They have done every way, but still, people still smoke. And since cigarettes are not illegal, they have no choice but to make them available. So in Thailand is a good example because there's no advertising, but still you can see a number of young people smoking. We don't know why, but it's obvious that cigarette advertising is not the cause. So what we're going to say here is there are quite a few means a lot, okay? There are quite a few young smokers in I would say even in countries where cigarette advertising has already been banned. Right. Thailand's a good example, right? There's no cigarette advertising, but we can still see a lot of young smokers So the next questions that we want to be able to answer would be, okay, so why is the banning of cigarette app not a good solution, right? So this question should immediately follow the previous questions. So if we can deny that advertising is not really the cause, then that make the banning a very stupid idea, because you are trying to get rid of something that did not cause the problem in the first place, right? Okay, so that's what we're gonna say here. Why is banning not a good solution? Because it is not going to deal with the actual cause of the addiction. All right. That's it. Next, how is banning of cigarette advertising? We answered that already. So are there any other factors that can contribute to nicotine addiction for teenagers? Okay, let's write this down. Are there any other factors that contribute to nicotine addiction? Okay, so when we want to think about the cause of a problem, my technique to help me generate ideas is that I will start from the very end. So in the end, we have addictions, correct? We have addiction to nicotine or cigarettes. Okay, that's what happens in the end. And then I will start to backtrack. Okay, I'm going to backtrack. I'm going to think about, hey, what should be the event that has to happen or has to be true before addiction to nicotine actually becomes true, or before this very last event happens. So before someone's become addicted to cigarette, they must have tried smoking, correct? So I would say before they become addicted, they have to smoke. Simple as that, right? They have to smoke cigarettes, like smoke cigarettes, or try smoking cigarettes. Now, before you can smoke cigarettes, you must have what? Access to it. You must obtain cigarettes somehow, right? If you cannot buy from a store, from a shop, then you might ask from your friends or from strangers somehow. So we need to have access to cigarettes. Okay. Now, before you can have access to cigarettes, you need to want to smoke, right? That's the start of everything. That set the balls rolling. If you have no desire, if you don't even want to smoke, then there's no way you can become addicted, because none of this conditions will be true. You don't want to smoke, you won't try to find, And if you can't find, you can't smoke. And as a result, you will not become addicted. So I would say desire to smoke is at the very top. And in my opinion, it is the root cause of all this, of the nicotine addiction, because without desire to smoke, none of the other condition will be true. Okay, so if you can think of all of this as, kind of like conditions. Yeah. All right, these are pretty much like an and condition, right? Or and logic. Okay, it is like an and logic where all these three conditions have to be true, right? So I could say conditions. All of these are conditions. And logic. That is the result. So if you don't have desire to smoke, say this is false. Even though you have access to cigarettes, right? You will not smoke. And because not all conditions are true, you will not becoming addicted to cigarettes. Okay, so you must have desire to smoke. Okay, and once you have desire to smoke, then you will start looking for ways to obtain cigarettes. And then you will start smoking. So when all these three conditions are true, the result will be true. That's when you become an addicted. Okay, so in order for each of these conditions to be satisfied or to be true, something must also happen, right? So desire to smoke is a result that requires a condition by itself. So we have to think about what could cause some people to have desire to smoke. Okay, how could these conditions become true? Well, I can think of one thing. I think it's the peer pressure. So peer pressure is it's like a force, right? It's a force that you cannot feel physically, but you can feel emotionally. All right, it's when everyone's around you starts doing something, and you don't feel like an odd one out. You don't feel like an outcast. So you have no options but to follow suit, to do what they do, right? Now, smoking is just happened to be one of the things that your friends do. All right, and if all your friends smoke, then you want to be part of the group, so you have to pick up this habit whether you like it or not, right? It's peer pressure. Next is the I think misconception. Okay. Now there are actually some people who use cigarettes to curb their appetite because there's obviously certain chemicals in cigarettes that when you ingest will not make you feel hungry that often. So it sort of curbs the appetite. It sort of makes you not wanting to eat food. So those who want to control the weight or to lose the weight would try to smoke because they believe they don't need to eat. I mean, not need to eat because cigarette will stop them from wanting to eat, so they can control their weight. Right? Another misconception is smoking to relieve stress. Well, while it is true that smoking cigarette can relieve the stress, and that's because of the nicotine that is contained in the cigarette, right? That you know cause the release of dopamine, making you feel good. Yep, it does relieve stress, but it is associated with so many other negative effects, and it is not worth the risk. Is yeah, it it might relate to stress, but it's going to ruin your health and entirely over the long term. And over the long term, it's kind of scary. I mean, if it affects your health right now, like if it makes you fall sick immediately, that is actually good because that's happened when you're still young and strong and you can recover from the sickness. But long-term effect is kind of scary because when it happens when you are old, when you are weak, and it's gonna take you time for recovery, right? So that's kind of scary. Um, so those are the misconceptions. Let's write things down so that we remember. Misconception is number one for weight control, smoke to control the weight control, and the other is for stress relief. Right. Okay, what else could bring about the desire to smoke? I think probably a social norm. So what is social norm? When you go somewhere um, and you start seeing people, doing something that might at first feel strange to you, like when it comes to New Zealand, it is quite strange that I see people walking barefoot in public places. Yeah, at first I'm like, what? But when I see this more often, it's kind of feel normal to me. It's like, okay, maybe those people who want to walk barefoot probably believe that their country is very clean. They can walk barefoot. And it sort of shows the level of relaxation. It shows that I'm feeling relaxed right now. So it sort of create an environment that is more friendly. I mean, imagine if somebody walked up to you barefoot, right? You're not going to feel too nervous or too tense to talk to because he seemed pretty chill, pretty relaxed, right? So yeah, it creates a friendly, relaxing ambience, vibe, kind of thing. So I begin to like it now, but it doesn't mean I'm walking barefoot because, I'm from a country where walking barefoot is uh, it's sort of disrespectful to I don't know, to the place, to the people who live in that place. So I don't walk barefoot, but I start uh, to feel more comfortable now when I see people walking barefoot. All right, I'm not judging anymore. Okay, so social norm could be one of the reasons. So imagine that if everyone around you smoke, then you probably figured out it's an okay thing to do. It's a good thing to do. Okay, so those are the triggering event for desire to smoke. Let's move on to access to cigarettes. So access to cigarette, what is it? It means you can obtain cigarettes, right? So what is it that um, make cigarettes so easily accessible? Now I would say is the lack of regulation. So regulation is policies that is that has been passed to control something. In this case, a tobacco regulation would be policies to control how cigarettes are sold, right? So in New Zealand, they do things like age restriction. So if you want to buy liquor from a liquor store, buy alcohol, like buy beer, you have to present your ID card. If you're under the allowance age, then they're going to ask you to leave. They're not selling alcohols to you. So you have to be above a certain age limit to be able to buy alcohols. All right, so that's age restriction. Okay, so lack of regulation, I would say no age restriction. Okay, what else? It could be about the price of the cigarettes themselves, right? Teenagers, they're not making money. So if the price of cigarettes is high enough, that it's going to make it more difficult to buy. And that might, to some degree, helps to discourage them from smoking because it's very expensive. They're better off spending that money on something else that makes them feel good, like buying some nice food or buying some, nice jeans or some nice outfits, some shoes. Right. Lack of regulation, no age restriction, and no price control. Right. Okay, that's what I can think. That's what I can think of right now. Let's move on to smoke cigarettes. Okay, so what are the things that have to be true before young people can smoke cigarettes? I would say getting to smoke. Okay, so they may have cigarettes in their hand, but if they go out and suddenly they get caught, they get spotted, some people call on them, they're going to be in trouble. Their parents going to ground them. They probably don't want to smoke that much, right? So I would say no no penalty. All right, no penalty. And no monitoring system. Right. Okay, so that's what we have so far. So let's turn all of this into some statements. Are there any other factors that contribute to nicotine addiction? Yes. One of them is peer pressure. Okay. Which gives young people desire to smoke. Okay. apart from that, misconception. For example, smoke to relieve stress. Smoke for stress relief. And smoke for weight control. Also increase the desire. Correct. Next, I will say another factor is lack of regulation. Right, and the factor is lack of regulation. For example, no age restriction, no price control, and the last factor is, I would say, lack of monitoring system, like surveillance system, but I don't want to confuse this with like a CCTV camera, right? Just, I would say, monitoring system. So when someone spot, underage people smoke, they should be reported. Lack of monitoring system, and penalty. Yeah. All right. So we have some ideas. Actually, we have a lot of ideas now. Moving on to the next question. What are some of the better solutions? What are some of the better solutions? So if we look at what we believe to be the factors, okay, solution would be an actions that is deployed to get rid of that factor or to prevent that factors from happening. Okay, so what we believe to be the most important factor is peer pressure. So what can be done to prevent peer pressure from influencing young people to want to smoke? So it's probably requires involvement of school teachers and parents, right? It requires collaboration, in my opinion. So I would say a collaboration from school teacher and parents to guide young people. Yeah, I think that would be, one solution that could work, right? Next would be, if you believe that young people smoke because of their belief that cigarettes can curb the appetite, leading to weight loss. Cigarettes could relieve their stress, making them feel good. Then we need to actually give them some better advice and explain them the dangers that are associated with smoking. So I would say um, explanation for dangers associated with smoking, and advice on how to address personal issues. Right. So parents and again school teachers have to explain to them the dangers associated with smoking, and also give them advice on how to lose weight. If you want to lose weight, let's do some exercise. Because it's the best way to lose weight, while at the same time improve your um, improve your strength, making you healthy, right? So you don't have to lose weight by compromising your good health. Then how do you okay? So that's it. What do we believe to be the next factors contributing to nicotine addiction? It's the lack of regulations, right? So what we can say here is there have to be uh, a, a law, right? So a law will have to be introduced, right? To restrict the age of buyers, and to make cigarettes not easily affordable. Right. So these are going to be the replacement, are going to be the alternative for the banning of cigarette advertising. We believe that this solution will work, but does it mean we have to of uh, choose one of this list, or all of this have to be implemented together or at the same time? That is something that we can discuss later. Okay, so we have quite a bit of contents right now. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break, and then we come back to look at the outlining of our essay. Okay, so I'll see you guys in 10 minutes. All right. So let's carry on. Okay, so before we go to chapter 2, um, let's us attempt these questions once again. Okay, so first, planning can help you to write faster. Is that true or not? Well, if you guys have been paying attention, you would realize that planning can actually save you a lot of time, can save you from frustration, can save you from making the wrong decision. So yes, indeed, it allows you to write faster. So I would say yes, that is true. Writing is all about expressing your ideas, and the audience have to make effort to understand you. Well, that is not quite true. So writing is not all about expressing your ideas. It's about making things easy for your audience to follow. Next, technical terms and jargons can be used with non-expert audience. Well, actually, no. If you're using a technical term with non-expert audience, you are going to discourage them. You will scare them off. So if you really need to use technical terms with non-expert audience, you will have to provide an analogy, an example that they can relate to, or you first have to try to explain those technical terms in a way that your audience can relate to. Knowing your audience allows you to get a better feedback. Yes, of course. Okay. And there are many different kind of readers out there. Um, if you don't know them, at least you should know what they're looking for. What's their criteria? What's the criteria that they use to uh, mark your work? If you know the criteria, you should be fine. Okay. Next, when answering a question, you need to pay attention to direction words. Absolutely. If you're not paying attention to direction words, what happened is your answer could be irrelevant, and the structures, the words, everything will be quite off, right? Okay, and it shows that you don't really care about your audience. So always pay attention to direction words. Direction words allows you to stay on point. Yes, of course. Um, Free writing doesn't need to be time. Actually, no. If you're doing free writing, you need time to help stimulate you to think, to come up with ideas. You have to constantly check your idea when doing free writing. Actually, no. If you want to do free writing, then you let it flow. Okay, you only start looking for uh, uh, the worthy ideas after the time's run out, and you go through what you have written looking for promising ideas. Asking yourself questions will help you to better anticipate your audience. Definitely. Okay, so sometime when you make a claim, you want to stop to think for a second that if you were a reader right now, what would be your questions? What do you want to know about this claim? So I like to call this switching role, right? As a writer, you have to switch role back and forth between readers and writer. So when you think, you have to think like a reader, because the reader are always going to be curious. They're always going to have some questions. So sometimes you have to think as a reader. all right, so that you can come up with ideas for your explanation, okay? But when you go back to explain things, you become a writer again, because you have to think about how you organize those ideas so that it is easy for your readers to follow and to understand. Planning is only a classroom practice. No. Planning is a everyday practice. Whatever you do, you have to think before you do it. Think about the consequence. Think about any other alternative that will save you more, save your time, save your effort. Okay? Right. And also think about risk management. Everything you do, there's going to be some risk involved with it. Okay? How could you minimize those risks? Okay, because when the risk happen, I mean, when something bad really happen, it could stop you from completing the project or making the project so hard to complete, right? It's going to delay the project. Nobody's going to be happy. So also think about some risk management as well. Okay, so that is all for chapter 1. Moving on to chapter 2, we're going to be looking at some techniques to outline our writing, and also techniques to organize our paragraph. Okay, so let's carry on. Okay, so chapter 2. All right. Chapter 2 will be focusing on this statement, okay, topic sentence. So we want to make it clear to you what is this statement, what is topic sentence, okay? But don't worry, stuff that we have done earlier will not go to waste. They will come back again at the end of the chapter when we talked about essay outline, okay? So don't worry, we will revisit all of these notes. But for now, let's focus on this statement. Okay, and like always, you're going to try to do all these questions. So read each sentence and then assess whether this is true or not. Number 1, this statement is just a paraphrase of the topic. Number 2, it is important to narrow down a focus topic. Number 3, you can ask a question out of your focus topic to form a thesis. Number 4, the thesis is your answer. I think the R is missing here, is your answer to the question. Number 5, you can use phrases in your thesis. So phrase is an incomplete sentence, okay? Number 6, an outlining will prevent you from going off track. Going off topic. Number 7, you need formal outlining for every kind of writing. Last one, a good thesis should not be too broad, too narrow, too unreasonable, or too underdeveloped. All right, here we go. So let's clear this up. Let's talk about how to develop a thesis, right? But before that, let us first talk about topic, okay? What is topic? Okay, so imagine you want to, write like a blog, okay, about, stuff that you do on a daily basis. You at least need to have a topic. Now, a good topic should meet all these 4 conditions, right? A topic that you choose has to be interesting to you first, okay? It has to be something that you like. It has to, if you are asked to write an assignment and you are given many different topics, okay, it has to fulfill the assignment as well, okay, fulfill the writing assignment. And number 3, it has to be sufficiently focused, which means it should not, there should be like a scope to it so that your explanation doesn't, your explanation doesn't have to be too much. Number 4, it has to be able to be turned into a question. Okay, so a topic, so in a nutshell, whatever topic you choose, it has to be first interesting to you. You have to like it, because when you like it, then you will be motivated to do research about that topic to acquire necessary information. Okay, but if you're writing an assignment, you have to make sure that the topic that you choose address all the parts of your assignment. It's going to fulfill your assignment. Okay, and the topic that you choose here, okay, yes, it's interesting, it fulfills the assignment, but it cannot be too broad. If it is too broad, then you can't explain it forever, and you have to write about that forever. There's no ending to it, right? We're going to going to look at how could you create a good topic. Okay, now suppose you are given this assignment. Write a statement for your generation. So this is quite open-ended. Okay, it's quite open. Write a statement about your generation. So generation here means the current era that you are living in. Okay, so I'm from the generation Y, millennial, because I was born in 1987. Okay, a long time ago. Okay, you guys would probably, I don't think anyone here was born before 2000, right? Okay, so you are the Gen Z or Gen Z. Okay, so you were born with technological development, right? Some of you were born, some of you grew up with iPad, iPhones. So you did not live in the times where people had to go through rapid change in technology like my time. In generation Y, like towards the end of the 20th century, that's a rapid change in technology. Yeah, okay, like for a few years, we were using a cell phone with buttons on them. Yeah, like one of the major brands for cell phone was Nokia, right? And it was quite expensive, and it doesn't have a touch screen. Only have some, some keypads. That's it. You can use a phone to make call, and maybe to play some simple games like snakes. But you can't use the phone to take a picture. You cannot send message, maybe SMS, but not like use it to chat with some chatting application. Okay, so we were using that for quite some time, right? But then came along this iPhone 3, which revolutionized the world of handheld device. A lot of cell phone brands, they just disappeared. They went out of business because they cannot compete with iPhone, right? Okay, so many brands have dissolved. Some of them were purchased by bigger companies. And so iPhone sort of became the standard of smartphone. That's when the smartphone emerged. Okay, so we witnessed that first time. So rapid change technology. Yeah, people back in my days, they used a lot of what you call digital cameras, right? Very popular brands like Nikon. What else? Casio. All right. A lot of people invested a lot of money on digital cameras, but then it came along this smartphone that can take high resolution pictures, and all those brands, they have to go out of business because they can't keep up with the pace. Okay, so in my day, in my time, there's a lot of changes. There have been a lot of changes. One of the major phenomenon that took place in my time was globalization. Globalization. So globalization, what is it? Okay. So you think about this. If you fill your bottle with waters, right? So you have 3 bottles. You fill the first bottles with green colors water. All right. You add some droplet in it, so you have green, bottles with green waters in it. Let me just draw some pictures so that you see the point. Okay. You fill it with green colors, green droplet, and you have another bottle. You fill it with some water, and you add some yellow colored droplet in it. It's going to dissolve in the in these waters, right? If you check it a little bit, all the contents in your bottles will be in that color of your droplet. Okay, but if the bottles are separated, so there's no way that the water from the yellow bottles is going to get mixed up with waters in the green bottle. So they stay separated, okay? You could have other, red bottle as well, okay? Let's say there's so many colors, but if they're separated, there's no way the color can get mixed up, right? Okay, so bottles represent border of countries during the 20th centuries. Okay, so people who live in their own country, they barely interact with people who live from faraway countries, or even with their neighboring countries, because of the lack of development in transportation and lack of development in telecommunication. Most of the country were isolated. Okay, so on the bright side, it allows cultures in that particular countries to grow, to develop, right? Okay, but on the other hand, there's not going to be any exchange of information, exchange of ideas, exchange of belief, because countries were isolated from each other. Okay, so that's what was happening in those days, in the 20th century. Okay, but after the Second World War, there was a rapid development in transportation. Cars were actually invented during the Second World War. They were actually the product of the war, because during the Second World War, they need transportation to move military quickly from one point to another, right? Okay, well, so mass productions of cars actually began post Second World War. Actually, during the Second World War, a lot of technologies have been developed, and those technologies that were used during the war some of them have become commonplace in our daily life. For example, microwave. Believe it or not, microwave was actually a technology that was born in the lab in military. So the purpose was actually used to locate or identify a flying object for radar. It was developed for radar technology. But out of accidents, scientists found its use in a household device. So that technology was then used to develop a microwave oven that we use to cook our food. Yeah, okay. But the most significant technologies that begins to allow people from one country to interact with people from another country would be transportation, like aircraft, right? Aircraft, train, cars, okay? So when people have access to this sort of transportation, they can go from their own country to visit other countries. Okay, so in 20th centuries, people were able to fly from continents far away like America to Thailand. Okay, so we had some sort of tourism. Okay, so people start going around the world, and they'll bring with them their own culture. So they start exchanging cultures to the with the local people of the country that they visit, right? And later on, we had internet. Now, internet is more um, is even better than than transportation technology in that it allows information to travel even faster, right? Transportation allows information to travel or to be transferred, yes, but the information transfer will be as fast as how the transportation move people, because it is the people who carry the information, right? If you cannot move people, then you cannot move information. But when we have telecommunication technology, the internet, you don't need to move people in order to move information. The information could be moved by itself, right? Through telephone lines, through fiber optic cables. Okay. Now, with exchange in information, people sort of be sort of become globalized. And you have to think about this bottles. If I happen to turn them sideways like this, okay, like this, okay. So here's a green water, and that's a yellow water. All right. If I connect them like this, now some of the green color water will mix up with the yellow, and the yellow will mix up with the green, and together they're going to create another color. Okay. All right. So you can see for yourself, if you mix a yellow and green, well, what color will you get? All right. And that's kind of like globalization. Yeah, we mix things up and we get a new culture. Now, I think one cultural products that emerged out of globalization was um, the way people dress, right? Like a shirt and a jeans, a t-shirt and a jean. I think that is one product from globalization, right? Because before globalization, people would have their own costumes, their own way of dressing, right? But after globalization, people sort of have a general idea of how they should look, and they somehow agree that is the best casual outfit would be a pair of jeans, a pair of sneakers, and a t-shirt, right? So that's the phenomenon. That's crazy. Okay, and apart from that, English, I think, is also another product of globalization. because when people from different culture, different language have to speak to each other, they need some common language, correct? Otherwise, we have to learn so many languages if we want to communicate with those from different countries. Like if I have to be able to speak Hindi, want to talk to someone from India, I have to be able to speak Chinese to talk to someone from China, Japanese to talk to someone from Japan. That's going to be crazy. So we need one international language that we can learn for once, and we can speak with anyone. It doesn't matter where they're from, and that's English. Okay, so the fact that we have to learn English is probably because our world have become globalized. We have become connected with other countries through telecommunication technology and through advanced public transportation. Okay, so that's globalization. Now, if I want to write about globalization, so this is my chosen topic. I chose this topic because it interests me, right? But I cannot just start writing right now because it's going to be too broad. So what I have to do is I have to try to narrow it down just a little bit. So by narrowing down, technically, you just need to add some more complement to your words here. So this is my narrow topic, globalization in Thailand. So this topic is going to create some scope, okay? But it's still unclear about how one affects the other, right? Because when I say globalization in Thailand, some people might be thinking that, okay, I'm going to be talking about the impact that globalization has on Thailand. Others might be thinking, oh, it's the other way around. Maybe he's going to talk about the impact that Thailand has on globalization. So this is not quite clear yet, all right, who's affecting whom. So I need to narrow it down a little bit further. And my third version would be the impact of globalization on Thailand. Now, this is better. So it is now clear who's affecting whom, right? It's now clear that I'm going to talk about the impact that globalization has on Thailand. Okay, so that is clear. But globalization has so many impacts in many aspects, right? It has some cultural impact. It has a lot of impact on the education. It has impact on economy, many things, culture, so many things, okay? But let's say I don't want to be talking about all kinds of impact. I just want to focus on only a few impacts. So I have to be a little bit more specific about what kind of impacts I will be talking about. And this brings me to the last version, the impact of globalization on Thailand's economy and culture. Okay, so this topic has a very clear scope right now. It's going to be the impact between from globalization of globalization on Thailand, but only in the areas of economies and culture. All right, so that is a good narrow topic. Now, topic is not yet a sentence. When you are writing an essay, you need to have what we call a thesis. So a thesis is nothing but a statement of your opinion, your claim, right? Okay. This is not yet a sentence. So it will not make up an introduction for you. You can't just write in your introduction, the impact of globalization on Thailand's economy and culture. You can't do that, okay? To write an introduction, you need to have a main idea, okay? So how do we write a main idea or a thesis? So one technique is to turn this narrow topic into a question. So you can look something like this. What are the impacts of globalization on Thailand's economy? Okay, and then try to answer that question. An example is, while globalization creates more job opportunities, it could lead to the total loss of cultural identity. Now, this can be a good thesis statement. Okay. This could be a good thesis or a good main idea. All right. So this is an example of how you can develop a thesis or a main idea when the assignment is open-ended, right? When your teachers allow you to write anything that you want with with uh, with some conditions, like write a statement for your generation. So yes, you can write about anything you want, but it has to be something that happened in your time. Okay, right. Now, what if you are writing an assignment that is more demanding, that is more specific, like assignment that ask a questions? Okay, when assignment asks a question, let's have a look at this. Television is a powerful medium. What do you think is the ideal place of television in our life and why? How close is reality to that ideal? Okay, so what if you encounter something like this? Okay, how would you develop your thesis? Okay, this time it's going to be easy because the answer to the question is going to be your main idea. Okay, so, but you have to remember one thing. Main idea is not reason why you think what you think. Okay, main idea is just what you think, is your opinion, is your answer to the questions. It is not going to include any justification or support. So there won't be, you don't need to explain yourself when you write your main idea. Okay, main idea should be just a short sentence, but what actually determines the length of your main idea is what you plan to cover later on in the midsection or in the body paragraph. Okay. All right. So here is an example of a main idea. All right. Let's read it. I think the ideal place of television is that it should be for information and entertainment, but that it shouldn't be watched too much. The reality is far from ideal because too many people spend too much time watching television to the point that they don't communicate with each other or do things that they should be doing to be physically and emotionally healthy. Okay, so that's quite a lengthy main idea. All right, but do they address the question? Yes, they address the questions. Okay, but do you actually believe this, or are you convinced enough to believe that, for example, the reality is far from ideal? Actually, no, because we haven't seen any justification yet. Okay. All right. So before we move on to the next page, I just want to summarize this one more time. Okay. So far we are talking about how to choose a good topic. Okay, how to choose a good topic. So a good topic um, has to be something that interests you, has to be something that is not too broad. Okay, but when you have the topic, your next move is to create a thesis statement. Now, a thesis statement has to be in the form of a sentence. A thesis statement can also be known as a main idea. Okay, so they're the same thing. Thesis statement, main idea, the same thing. It is a claim. Okay, it is a claim. It is what you believe. Okay, it could be answer to the question, but it's not yet credible. All right. Okay, so that's this is statement. Now, okay. Let's try to do this exercise yourself. So it says here, identify a factors that you believe will have an impact on tourism development. Explains how that factors may influence the growth of tourist number. So what I'd like you to try is to just come up with a broad topic. Okay, so in this case, it's going to be that factor, right? What do you think could be a factor that will determine growth of the number of tourists? All right, there could be many, could be multiple factors. You just have to come up with one. Okay, and then try to narrow it down by adding some complements, some adjective to it, make it more specific. Okay, so once you think is specific enough, the last thing to do is to turn that now phrase into a sentence, right? To create the thesis statement. Okay, let's give you guys 5 minutes, and then I'll come back and give you some model answer. All right. So let's see the answer. A factor that you believe will have an impact on tourism development explains how that factors may influence the growth of tourist number. Okay, so what do you think? Well, I think one factors would be a political climate, right? I would say a political climate. All right, that's a factor. Now, I have to narrow the topics down a little bit. So I probably would say a political climate in Thailand. Right. Okay. Now, Faith, I don't want to narrow it down any further. I think this is clear enough. Then I can just turn that into a question. So I'm just going to skip that part, and I'm going to ask myself, how does a political climate in Thailand affects the growth of tourist number? Okay, so that's how I turn my topic into a question. Now, the answer to this question will be a tentative thesis. So, how am I going to answer these questions? I believe I can say that a political climate can wait a minute. Say political stability can attract foreign, right? Political stability can attract foreign tourists to come to Thailand. Right? Political stability can attract foreigners to come to Thailand. I would say more. I would just move that a little bit to the right. Political stability can attract more foreign tourists to come to Thailand, while political unrest okay, will discourage foreign visitors due to their life safety. All right, so political stability can attract more foreign tourists to come to Thailand, while political unrest. So political unrest is when our country have a lot of protesting, have a lot of violence, uh, wars in the middle of city or civil war. Okay, so when foreign tourists see that on the news, they're going to feel discouraged. They don't want to come to Thailand because they fear for their life. All right. So that is how you develop a thesis statement, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Now, let us move on to outlining. Okay. So before I talk about outlining, I just like to talk a little bit about the structure of an essay in general. Okay. So when we are writing an assignment, we are actually writing an essay. And an essay would usually contain introduction, body, and conclusion. Okay, so that's what essay is all about. Okay, every kind of writing, it doesn't matter how complicated, how complex it is. Even for dissertation also have introduction, body, conclusion. Okay, your assignment, regardless of how many words you write, 3,000 words, there's introduction, bodies, and conclusion. Okay, all kinds of writings, introduction, bodies, conclusion. Okay, now the most important thing that you must have in the introduction is the thesis statement. All right, it's a thesis, or you can call it main idea. Okay, so thesis statement or main idea is the major claim. It's a statement that you want people to accept, that you want people to believe. Now, whether you going to be successful in convincing your readers to accept your claim will depend on how you explain your point, explain your main idea, or how to justify your main idea. And that is what you're going to do in the following section called the body paragraph. Okay, so body is where you justify. It's where you present all your reasons and your explanation, where you present your theory, your examples. All right, the explanations goes in this stage. All right, so once you are done explaining everything, your main idea will become a justified main idea. Okay, so I would call this a justifying main idea. Most people just call it conclusion. Okay, so in a way, it's a similar process of cooking, right? So you want to eat something. You want to eat an egg, but this is raw egg. So you can't eat it until you apply heat to it. So once you apply heat to it, the inside of the egg is cooked, right? And you have boiled eggs. So they're going to look identical. Raw eggs and boiled eggs, they look just the same. You can't tell the difference. But the only difference is raw eggs, it is not edible. You can't eat raw egg. Whereas boiled eggs is edible now because the content inside is cooked. Okay, so that's the major difference. So which should be more expensive, boiled eggs or raw eggs? Of course, boiled eggs, because it went through the process of cooking. All right, you put in your effort. You have to consume some. I mean, you use power, electrical power to do this. All right, you spend time on it, so there's cost behind boiled eggs. So this is going to be more expensive. So the same is true for writing an essay. Your introduction will contain a main idea. It's kind of like a raw eggs. It's understandable, yeah, but it's all depends on how you cook it or how you justify it. All right. And after justification, you will have the same thing. But the only difference is that your main idea will be more credible after justification. Okay, now let's have a look at outlining. So what is outlining? Outlining is basically like a blueprint when you are building a structure like a house. You need to have a blueprint. So the blueprint will tell the technicians and the builders exactly how they're supposed to construct your house. Okay, so blueprint is not a house, but it tells you all the details of how the house should be constructed. Right. So outlining is pretty much like that. Okay, it's going to outline your entire writing, your entire essay, starting from introduction to body to conclusion. Okay, so let's have a look at this paragraph here. Let's read it. Say every essay have the same underlying structures, claim, support. That is the essay asserts an idea, aka is thesis, and then support the thesis with specific examples, evidence, and details. And this claim support structure is then repeated throughout the essays on many levels. The ideas that provide support for the thesis major support are claims themselves and therefore need support. The structure then looks something like this. Okay, so this is what the structure of your essay look like. It is going to be a blueprint for your essay. Okay, so like I told you earlier, an essay will consist of 3 parts. This is the introduction. So the most important thing to include in your introduction is the main idea or thesis statement. But your introduction does not necessarily have to have only main idea. It could have background story as well. But we are not going to worry so much about the background story yet. We're not going to worry so much about digression, okay? And this is your body. So your body will contain what? Major supporting idea, minor supporting idea, and support. Okay? Your one body paragraph can have multiple minor supporting idea and its own support, but they have to be aligned with the major supporting ideas. For example, if your major supporting ideas is about the benefits of doing physical exercise, then minor supporting idea has to clarify on those benefits. And it has to be benefits about or with regards to exercise only. It can't be benefits about, eating vegetable or eating healthy food. It has to be the benefit that's come from doing physical exercise, right? Okay. Your essay can have also multiple major supporting ideas. So you can talk about benefits of exercise for one major supporting idea. And for the next paragraph, you could talk about negative side effects of over exercise. Okay, or when you overdo something, when you do physical exercise excessively, okay, or when you push it beyond your limit, what's going to happen? All right, so your major supporting idea could be something about negative effects of doing too much workout. All right, minor support will have to be aligned with major support. So you can talk about muscle injury. You can talk about I don't know well, muscle injury is one of them. Could be heart cardiac malfunctioning, something to do with your heart, okay? Because if you work too much, your heart also has to work a lot to pump blood to circulate your body. So you're putting too much stress on your heart, you could have a heart disease. So over workout is not good. All right, we're not going to worry about conclusions just yet. We only care right now about introduction and body. And for introduction, we only care about thesis only. All right, we're not going to worry about background information. So let us do some outlining, but we're going to do it for the questions that we were brainstorming earlier, and that is going to be this one here, okay? So the question asks us whether we agree that all cigarette advertising should be banned to reduce the percentage of young smokers. So after analysis, we have found the problems. We found that the problem is teenage nicotine addiction. We found that what they believe to be the cause is cigarette advertising. And what they believe to be a solution is to ban cigarette advertising. And as a result, they expect that the production in the what did I write here? They expect that the percentage of young smokers will decrease. And after that, we brainstorm by asking questions to clarify, to raise awareness, to argue in favor of that statement, the initial statement, and questions when we argue in opposition, or as opposed to the initial statement. Okay, and here are some of the answers that we can use to write our essay, but we are not going to write any essay yet. We're just going to outline. But the first thing we must do is to decide whether we should agree or disagree. So by looking at the content that we have in the support section or the for section, okay, we seem to be able to answer only two questions. The first question is, how could cigarette advertising lead to teenage nicotine addiction? Yes, and we have some answer for that. And for the next question, how could the banning of cigarette advertising lead to a low percentage of young smokers? Yes, we have answer to that question, but that is it. We don't have any things about the inherent benefits of banning cigarette advertising. Okay, so you have to ask yourself, do you think you're going to survive with just this much information? If you think you can, then yes, of course, you can agree with them. You can say that, hey, banning cigarette ad is going to be a beautiful solution. It's going to work, right? Okay, but if you think that, hey, I don't think I can extend this any further, this is the end of the walkway. You have to you can't elaborate upon this, then you probably want to take a break and turn around and take a different path. All right, you want to head a different direction because this is not getting you anywhere. Okay, now let's have a look at some of the ideas that we have generated to argue against the claim that banning cigarette is actually a good idea. So apparently we have so much to write about, starting with reasons why cigarette advertising may not be the major cost. All right, and then we have some information to say that banning cigarette advertising is not a very good idea. All right, and then we have some information about other factors that could be a major contributing factors of teenage nicotine addiction. We have some solutions that can deal with the problem far better than banning cigarette advertising. So apparently, disagreeing with them is going to be the best. Is going to be the best idea after having considered the information that we have so far, right? Okay, so that means our thesis, okay, our thesis is going to uh, be something along the line of banning ad is stupid. Okay, I'm saying along the line. I'm not saying that it should be like this. Okay, um, because we know that we're going to disagree, right? I'm going to put at the bottom here, we're going to disagree. But you can't just write, oh, I disagree with the statement. No, you don't write this statement like this. Why? Because you have to bear in mind that a person who read your work doesn't have to be the same person who asks you the question. If the person who read your work is the same person who asks you the question, then yes, you can say, I disagree, because he or she will know what you disagree with, right? But if a person who read your work doesn't know anything about any question, and then you say, I disagree, right? That person will be confused, right? They will be baffled as to what are you disagreeing about, because they don't have the question, they don't know anything, right? So you're not going to write a thesis statement like this. A thesis statement should never contain words like agree or disagree. Instead, you want to write just a nice affirmative sentence that indicates your position, whether you agree or disagree. Now, here is one example. So I'm going to disagree with that idea, right? I'm going to disagree with the idea of banning cigarettes. I can say some things like, the banning of cigarette advertising is not an effective solution. I can say that. The banning of cigarette advertising is not an effective solution. Yes, I can do that. So that's one possible thesis. Now, another possible thesis is that you perhaps want to consider, of all these questions that you have answered, are you going to be writing about all of them, or you will only select answer from particular questions to write about? For example, if I only want to write about, the first question as to why cigarette advertising is not the cause, and I want to write just about why banning is not a good solution. Yeah, if I want to do just this, then my thesis should insinuate or should imply things that the reader can look forward to, right? It should imply what they can look forward to. So this thesis right here is not really implying what they can look forward to. I mean, if you read this, the ban of cigarette is not an effective solution. What's the first question that comes to your mind, right? You're gonna be thinking that, hey, all right, this is not effective, so what is effective? So some people might be wanting to know other solutions that will work. okay? So in order to set a more realistic expectation to your readers, your thesis might have to include some other terms so that, people know what they can look forward to. Right. Okay, just for example. Now, because I'm going to be writing this essay myself, I need to choose what I want to talk about. Now, of all the questions I have answered, I think I want to pay specific attention to question number 3, okay? I want to focus on factors that contribute to nicotine addiction. And I want to focus on better solutions. I want to do this, okay? I don't want to focus too much on the first 2 questions. Suppose this is what I want to do, okay? I'm not saying that, hey, you don't need to focus on the first question. No, I didn't mean that, okay? I'm just giving you an example that I just want to focus on these 2, okay? I mean, if you can distribute your attention, your focus on everything, that would be perfect. That would be perfect, right? You can strike a balance. You can talk about why cigarette is not the main cause, why banning is not going to work, what are the actual factors, what are the better. If you can talk, if you can discuss all these 4 things, all right, with decent amount of details, that would be perfect. That would be awesome. But let's just say that, look, I can't, right? My time is limited, all right? So I rather focus on other factors and solutions. What should my thesis statement sound like so that my reader know what to expect? Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this statement, thesis statement, and I'm going to say, some things like nicotine addiction, right, stems from several factors, right? Nicotine addiction stems from several factors. And this problem requires multiple these problems require multiple actions. And collaborative effort I would like to swap this would require collaborative effort from school teachers, parents, and the authority. All right, so that would be how I would phrase my thesis statement. Nicotine addiction. Oh, I forgot one important thing. There were teenagers, right? Because this is only affecting the demographics population only. So teenage, nicotine, addiction stems from teenage nicotine addiction stems from several other factors. Okay, stem from several other factors. And this problem requires collaborative effort from school, teachers, parents, and the authorities. Okay. All right. So when I write like this, right? When a person read the first line, right? I mean the first sentence, they're going to be asked. They're going to want to know what those factors are. So when I say teenage nicotine addiction stems from several other factors, they're going to want to know, okay, so what are those factors? And when I write, this problem requires collaborative effort from schools, teachers, parents, and the authorities. Then they want to know, okay, what do the school teachers have to do to prevent young people from nicotine addiction? What do parents have to do? What do the authority or the government have to do? All right, so they will have this question, which is good because I have already planned to talk about those two things. I have already planned to talk about the cost. I've already planned to talk about the better solutions. So this is coming my way, right? Okay, so that's it. That's the thesis. That's for your introduction. Moving on to the body paragraph now. Okay, so in the body section, you're going to have paragraphs, right? Now, the number of paragraphs will depend on the subtopics that you want to discuss. Okay, so based on this statement here, there could be two subtopics. There could be one could be about factors, and the other could be about better solutions. So I could have two body paragraphs. Okay, each one with different major supporting ideas. Okay, so for my first paragraph, my major support, okay, I'll just write major support, right? My major supporting ideas will be factors, right, that contribute to nicotine addiction. Okay, now minor support has to be linked with the major support. So it has to clarify those factors. Okay, so one of my minor support would be peer pressure. Okay, so peer pressure. Right? And then what would be my support for this particular minor support? In other words, what would be my explanation for that? So what I have prepared here is that peer pressure gives young people desire to smoke. So I'm going to write it down. Peer pressure gives young people desire to smoke. Right? Now the next minor support. Okay. The next minor support will be misconception. Misconception. And the support, right? It's going to be what? Let's go back. Okay. Young people, some of them, right? Smoke, curb appetite, or to reduce the stress or relieve the stress. Yep. So how many factors do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, another factor. Okay, so I will have 3 minor support here. So my next minor support would be lack of regulation. And my explanation is so lack of no age restriction, no price control. Okay. Absence of age restriction and price control makes it easy for young people to have access to cigarette. It's like that. Okay, so these are my major and minor support. This will make up one body paragraph. Okay, right. Moving on to my next body paragraph, right? So I'm gonna have the next major support. So my next major support will be about better solutions. Better solutions. So for the first minor support, is collaboration from school teachers and parents. Okay, and then my explanation. All right, what would be my explanation for this? So I could say, based on what I have prepared, guide young people, okay? Explain the dangers associated with smoking. Okay, so I would say offer guidance and explanation. Offer guidance, explanation for dangers and what? And advice on how to address personal issues. And advice on personal issues. Okay, that's for minor support. Okay, the next minor support, that would be the action to be taken by the authority. So a law has to be introduced, right? I would say law enactment and enforcement. Okay, law enactment and law enforcement. So what is that? There have to be regulation, like age restriction and price control. Age restriction, price control. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so if you have an outline like this, then it's very clear what is going to happen for your next 20-30 minutes of writing, because you know exactly what will goes into your introduction, what will goes into your body. You even know how many body paragraph you will have. Okay, so the rest, all you have left to do would be to connect all these ideas together, right? Put them in a structure, because some of the words that we use in our outlines, they're not sentence yet, they're just phrases. Okay, so when you write a paragraph, you have to decide on the structures to contain all these phrases. You have to decide on some linking devices to connect all these sentences together, so that your reader understand the relationship across all these sentences. Okay, that's it. Okay, so that's an outline. So if you have an outline, I would say you already halfway through. In fact, you can even use your outline to produce a verbal essay. So what do we mean by a verbal essay? So a verbal essay is when you use this outline pretty much like a script. So you see, like when you give a presentation, right? You have to be talking to your audience. You'll be giving speech, but you cannot be reading word for word. However, in order to help you to remember what you should talk about in your presentation, you can have like a piece of paper with just a list of things that you should mention in your presentation. So this behaves just like a script, okay? It tells you, hey, the first thing you must talk about is this. Once you're done with that, you can move on to talk about the factors. And don't forget that there are 3 factors, right? One of them is peer pressure, the other one is misconception, the last one is lack of regulation. Once you are done with the factors, then you can talk about the solutions. And remember that there are 2 solutions based on who have to take the action. The first solution is the action to be taken by school teachers and parents. The next solution is the action to be taken by the authority. And that's it. All right. Okay. So that's outline for you guys. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the benefits of generating an outline before you draft an essay. So there are 3 benefits for doing that. First, it gives you a roadmap. Okay, so like I said, it shows you what is going to happen in the next 10-20 minutes of your writing journey. Okay, all right, you know where to go, you know when to stop. It's kind of like driving on a road, and you know the total distance you have to drive, you know the sign that tells you where to turn. Okay, so it gives you a roadmap. It will prevent you from veering off the topic. So veer off means to go beyond or to go off topic, talking about something that is irrelevant. An outline will also help you to determine when you need more support for your thesis. Yes. Okay. So if you take a look back at our outline, okay, every minor support needs to have support. Now, for some reason, if your minor support doesn't have any support, and that's probably because you cannot think of any good support. So what does that mean? That means the minor support that you have is not going to be very, it's not going to be promising. It's in fact, it's going to end up being your burden, because if you actually put it in your essay, you will get stuck. You will have to think, hey, how should I explain this? For example, one of your minor support is peer pressure, but how are you going to explain that? I don't know. I know it's peer pressure, but I don't even know what peer pressure means. So how can I explain that peer pressure can lead to addiction of nicotine? So when you come across something like this, then you know what to do. You will quickly cross that idea off the list, because it will become your frustration later on when you are writing. Okay, next, an outline will help you to determine where you need more support. I've said that when you create an outline, you'll be able to see gaps in the development of your ideas. Strongly supported assertions stand out in contrast to weaker ones. Yep, exactly. So if you have an idea that you cannot explain, just cross it off. Third, an outline will help to judge the plausibility of your thesis. Okay, so the plausibility of your thesis means, is your thesis a good thesis or not? So a good thesis should be a thesis that allows you to elaborate, okay, with a lot of words, a lot of details, okay? So let's assume that I took a wrong turn, okay? And I ended up agreeing with them, okay? And so when I outline, I'm going to see that, oh my God, I have only 2 major support. One is about how advertising leads to nicotine addiction. And the other one is about how the banning will lead to a reduction in the percentage of smoker. So I will see that I only have 2 major support and no minor support. So that means each body paragraph will be very small. All right, they could barely make up a paragraph by themselves. So when I see that, I'm going to know that, oh my God, this is not a good idea. So I should go back and take a different position, rewrite my this statement. Okay, so it's going to save me from a disaster. All right. Okay. Next. All right. So it helps to judge the plausibility of your thesis. Now, a good thesis should meet this condition. Number one, it should not be too broad. Okay, a thesis that is too broad will, if your thesis is too broad, then the reader expectations will run high. Okay, they might look forward to something that you are not capable of meeting, of explaining, right? A thesis that is too narrow is not good either, because there will be very little for you to write about. Okay, and when it's too narrow, then you have to go very deep in details. So you, as you dig deeper and deeper, you're going to it's going to get very technical. Let's put it that way. Okay, as you go deep in detail, it's going to get very technical. So it's going to be hard for you to explain. It's going to be hard for your reader to understand. Next, unreasonable. A thesis should not be unreasonable. So it should be reasonable. So an unreasonable thesis is going to be based on a very bad logic. Yeah, like if I say, we should ban cigarette, right? We should ban cigarette advertising, so that people will buy. No, let me rephrase. Okay, we should decrease the price of cigarette so that less people will buy. So this is a bad logic, right? Because if you decrease the price of something, it will promote the purchase of it. It will encourage more people to buy, right? So this sentence is based on a bad logic, all right? So it should be, we should increase the price of cigarettes so that young people have difficulty buying, or so that young people cannot afford, right? Okay, underdeveloped. Okay, so what is that? Underdeveloped? Underdeveloped is a thesis that is not clear, that is missing something. Okay, an example is if I write, in my opinion, cigarette advertising may not be the cause of nicotine addiction. Now, this is underdeveloped, it's incomplete, because it does not address, it doesn't say whether the banning of advertising is actually a good solution or not, right? Okay, so this is underdeveloped, which is not good either. Okay, so these are the 4 conditions, or you can say 4 don'ts, things that you should avoid. You should avoid this is being too broad, avoid this is being too narrow, being too unreasonable, or being too underdeveloped. Okay. All right. So I think I like to finished for today. Okay. My goal today is to show you an outline of our essays based on our brainstorming session yesterday, and I have already achieved that. Okay, so this is going to be a QA session. If you guys have any questions, it is your time to ask me. All right, I'm going to be here to answer your questions if you have any. All right. Okay. Feel free to ask any question, but if you don't have any questions and you have to go somewhere, you are welcome to leave the session, and I will see you next time.